Today I need to share with you something that still makes my heart race just thinking about it. An afternoon that started like any other and became the turning point of my life. You know how sometimes life surprises us in the most unexpected moments? Well, that's exactly what happened to me. A simple courtesy visit to his office to resolve condominium matters turned into something I never imagined I could feel again. If you've ever experienced a late emotional awakening, leave your comment below, because this story will touch your heart in ways you can't even imagine. It was an ordinary afternoon when I needed to resolve administrative matters for the building where I live. He was the building manager, a man I had always admired from afar in the hallways, but with whom I had never had a more intimate conversation. When I entered his office, I was greeted by that mature smile that carried stories of a well-lived life. His gray hair framed a face marked by time, but that radiated a masculine confidence that completely disarmed me. The way he stood up to greet me, with that natural elegance of experienced men, awakened something within me that I thought was asleep forever. While we discussed condominium matters, I couldn't help but notice how his deep, measured voice both calmed and unsettled me. There was something hypnotic about the way he gestured with his large, firm hands, as if each movement was calculated to convey confidence. The professional environment began to become charged with a subtle tension that I wasn't sure was just on my part. It was as if my body recognized something that my mind hadn't fully processed yet. The physical proximity necessary to analyze the documents made me feel his discreet cologne, a woody fragrance that awakened memories of a femininity I had forgotten I possessed. His office was a reflection of his personality, organized, sophisticated, with dark wood furniture that exuded timeless masculine charm. The shelves full of books revealed a cultured man, someone who invested time in knowledge, not just appearances. The way he handled each document with care, how his long fingers traced the pages, revealed a patience and dedication that immediately captivated me. It was impossible not to notice how expressive his hands were, telling silent stories of experience and maturity. Each gesture carried a natural sensuality that made me question why I had never paid attention to those details before. Tell me in the comments, have you ever felt that inexplicable chemistry with someone you only knew superficially? The conversation flowed naturally when he offered coffee. Accepting meant prolonging that moment that was already making me question many things about myself. While he prepared the drink, I observed his precise movements, the way his broad shoulders filled his dress shirt, how his experienced hands handled each object with care. There was a mature sensuality in each gesture, something that younger men simply don't possess. It was the confidence of someone who already knows life, who knows exactly what they want and how to achieve it. When our eyes met by chance, I felt a shiver run down my spine, as if he could read all the confused thoughts passing through my head. The coffee was delicious, but I could barely taste it. My attention was completely focused on the way he held the cup, how his lips touched the porcelain, how his neck moved with each sip. It was as if I was rediscovering the pleasure of observing a man, something I hadn't done with such intensity in a long time. He noticed my distraction and smiled in a way that indicated he knew exactly the effect he was having. It wasn't an arrogant smile, but rather that of someone who recognizes a mutual connection and feels flattered by it. In that moment, I understood that I wasn't alone in that growing attraction. We sat side by side on his office sofa to review some contracts, and that's when the proximity became almost unbearable. His masculine presence enveloped me like a magnetic aura that I couldn't ignore. The way he explained each clause, leaning slightly in my direction, made me completely lose focus on the subject. His warm breath brushed my neck when he pointed to something on the paper, and I felt my body react in a way I had forgotten was possible. It was as if he awakened a version of me that had been asleep for years, a woman I didn't even know still existed within me. The tension in the air was palpable when he noticed I was no longer paying attention to the documents. Our eyes met again, but this time they remained connected for a few seconds that seemed like an eternity. There was a silent question in his mature eyes, a masculine curiosity that made me realize that perhaps I wasn't the only one feeling that magnetic attraction. The moment was charged with possibilities, with paths that could be taken with a simple word or gesture. It was like standing on the edge of an emotional precipice, knowing that one wrong step would change everything forever, but at the same time being irresistibly drawn to the fall that promised to be liberating. Tell me, how do you handle those moments of emotional tension when you know a decision can change everything? The afternoon progressed and our conversation drifted to more personal topics. He told me about his travels, his projects, his passions, and I found myself completely involved in his life experience. There was something extraordinarily seductive about a man who knew how to tell stories, who had interesting experiences to share. Each account revealed layers of his personality that fascinated me even more. It was like unraveling a book whose pages held secrets and adventures I wanted to know intimately. The way his eyes sparkled when talking about the things he loved made me want to be one of those passions, to be someone capable of awakening that same enthusiasm in his mature and knowing gaze. As our intimacy grew through conversation, I realized how I had been craving this deep connection with someone. It wasn't just physical attraction, although it was definitely present and growing every minute. It was the hunger for true communication, to be seen and understood by someone who really paid attention to what I said. He asked intelligent questions, showed genuine interest in my opinions, and this made me feel valued in a way I hadn't experienced in a long time. It was invigorating to discover that I was still capable of engaging someone with my personality, that there were aspects of myself that remained interesting and worthy of exploration. When the subject drifted to past relationships, we were both careful but honest. There was a shared vulnerability in that conversation, a mutual willingness to show ourselves as human, imperfect, but still capable of feeling intensely. He spoke about disappointments and learnings with a maturity that impressed me, without bitterness, but with the wisdom of someone who transformed difficult experiences into personal growth. This ability to accept the past without being defined by it was incredibly attractive. I realized I was facing a man who had made peace with himself, and this made him even more irresistible in my eyes. It was when he got up to get more documents that the unexpected happened. As he passed behind me, his hand rested lightly on my shoulder, an apparently casual touch that sent waves of heat throughout my body. It was as if that experienced hand carried an electrical energy capable of awakening every dormant nerve ending. The touch lasted only a few seconds, but it was enough time for me to feel all the mature masculinity emanating from him. When he whispered an excuse near my ear, his hoarse voice made my skin completely bristle. In that moment, I knew I had crossed an invisible line and that there was no going back to the woman I was when I entered that office. The impact of that simple touch was devastating. I felt as if my entire body had been connected to an electrical current, awakening sensations that had remained dormant for so long that I had forgotten their intensity. It was more than physical desire. It was the recognition of a deep need for connection, to be touched not just physically, but emotionally, by someone who understood the silent language of mature bodies. His hands carried the promise of knowledge, of patience, of an intimacy built with time and dedication, not with haste or superficiality. It was the kind of touch that promised entire nights of discoveries, of rediscovering parts of myself through the eyes and hands of an experienced man. When he returned and sat even closer, the atmosphere had completely changed. We were no longer just building manager and resident discussing administrative matters. We were a man and a woman in full awakening of an attraction that transcended any logic or convenience. The way he looked at me had transformed. His mature eyes now carried an intensity that made me feel desired in a way I hadn't experienced in a long time. It was as if he saw through all the masks I wore daily and saw the real woman hiding behind the responsibilities and routines that had become my identity in recent years. The air between us had become dense, charged with an electricity that could be felt physically. Every word we exchanged now carried subtext. Every look lasted a few seconds longer than would be appropriate in a normal conversation. I felt like a teenager experiencing passion for the first time, but with the consciousness and emotional depth of a mature woman. It was an intoxicating combination that made me question everything I thought I knew about myself. I realized I had spent so much time on autopilot that I had forgotten what it was like to feel truly alive, truly present in a moment of genuine connection with another human being. Tell us, have you ever felt completely transformed by an unexpected encounter? The conversation took a more intimate turn when he commented on how I seemed different that day, more luminous, more present. His words touched me deeply because they reflected exactly what I was feeling. It was as if his presence had lit a light within me that had gradually gone out over the years. I explained how I felt renewed in that environment, in that company, and I saw in his eyes a gleam of masculine satisfaction for knowing he was capable of provoking that effect on me. It wasn't vanity, but rather the recognition of a rare chemistry that deserved to be explored and celebrated. He moved even closer, our proximity now impossible to ignore. I could feel the heat emanating from his body, could see every detail of his mature face marked by experience, but still incredibly attractive. The lines around his eyes told stories of genuine smiles. The expression marks revealed a life lived fully. There was something deeply seductive about this maturity, this self-acceptance that comes only with age and experience. It was an attraction that transcended the superficiality of youth and was based on depth, substance, the promise of a connection that would be rich in all aspects. The decisive moment came when, while explaining a final clause, his hand accidentally met mine on the document. The contact made us both look directly at each other, and this time we didn't look away. It was as if time had stopped and only we existed in that silent office. I felt his hand move gently over mine, an almost imperceptible caress that awakened sensations I thought I had lost forever. In that simple and subtle touch, there was more intimacy and connection than I had felt in years. It was the kind of moment that would change everything, that would make me question choices, priorities, and mainly that would make me rediscover a part of myself that had been asleep for so long. The intensity of that touch was overwhelming. It was as if our hands had established their own communication, transmitting messages that our words were not yet able to express. I felt my heart accelerate to the point of thinking he could hear it, felt my breathing become irregular, felt a wave of heat course through my entire body. It was as if every cell of mine was awakening from a long sleep, as if I was coming back to life after years of functioning in survival mode. His hands were firm, warm, secure, promising protection and passion in equal measure. It was the kind of touch that spoke of entire nights of discoveries, of dawns dedicated to the pleasure of intimately knowing every curve, every whisper, every sigh of desire. It was then that he leaned slightly, and for an infinite moment, we remained like this, breaths intertwined, hearts racing, two human beings suspended between reason and desire. His hand moved slowly to my face, a delicate touch like someone handling something precious. In that instant, I felt as if I was being reborn, as if a dormant version of myself had finally found the way back to the surface. It was more than attraction. It was the recognition of a deep and inexplicable connection that transcended any barrier I could have built over the years. It was the promise of an intimacy that would be built not just with bodies, but with souls that recognized and completed each other. What happened in those seconds suspended in time was more powerful than any declaration of love I had ever heard. It was a silent communication between two mature beings who recognized the rarity of that moment, the preciousness of that connection. His eyes told me things that words could never express, and I knew mine responded with the same intensity. It was as if we had found a rare treasure that needed to be treated with reverence and care. The anticipation was almost unbearable, but at the same time delicious, because we knew that what was to come would be extraordinary, would be transformative, would be the kind of experience that marks a life forever. Have you ever lived a moment like this, when you know nothing will be the same after that instant? In that suspended moment, I realized how I had spent years denying myself the right to feel fully, to allow myself to be desired and to desire with intensity. Life had conditioned me to prioritize responsibilities, to function in automatic mode, to forget that there was still a passionate and sensual woman within me. But there, under his mature and knowing gaze, this woman was resurging with full force, demanding her right to exist, to be seen, to be celebrated. It was both liberating and frightening, because it meant I would have to rethink many things about my life, about my choices, about what really made me happy. The erotic tension in the air was almost tangible. Each second that passed increased the intensity of that moment, charged with infinite possibilities. I could feel his masculine energy enveloping me, warming me, awakening me to sensations I hadn't experienced in a long time. It was as if my entire body was in a state of alert, every nerve ending awaiting the next touch, the next look, the next word whispered with that hoarse voice that made me melt inside. Physical proximity had become a necessity, no longer an accident. I wanted to feel his presence enveloping every part of me, wanted to lose myself in the security of his experienced arms. When he finally murmured my name, it was as if I heard it for the first time. There was reverence in the way he pronounced each syllable, as if my name were a prayer, a promise, a declaration. In that moment, I understood that he saw me not just as an attractive woman, but as someone special, someone who deserved to be desired with intensity and respected with devotion. It was the perfect combination of passion and admiration between physical desire and emotional connection. I felt tears forming in my eyes, not from sadness but from gratitude for rediscovering that I was still capable of inspiring this kind of feeling in someone. The office had transformed into our private universe, a sacred space where two souls recognized each other and decided to surrender to the magic of that encounter. The outside world had ceased to exist. There were only the two of us, our synchronized breathing, our hearts beating in the same rhythm, our gazes saying everything that words couldn't yet express. It was as if we were suspended in a time bubble where nothing else mattered besides that pure and intense connection that had emerged between us. I knew that moment would forever mark my memory as the day I felt completely alive again. Slowly, he brought his face close to mine, giving me time to pull back if I wanted, demonstrating the respect and patience that only truly mature men possess. But I didn't want to pull back. I wanted to dive headfirst into that experience that promised to be transformative. When our lips finally met, it was as if the whole world made sense again. It was a meeting of souls that recognized each other through a simple gesture, but loaded with deep meaning. His lips were firm, warm, experienced, knowing exactly how to awaken sensations I thought I had lost forever. That moment was the culmination of an entire afternoon of growing intimacy, the point where all the accumulated tension finally found its expression. It was more than a physical gesture. It was soul-to-soul communication, a promise that this special connection that had emerged between us deserved to be explored and celebrated. I felt as if I was awakening from a long sleep, as if I had finally found a part of myself that had been lost for years. It was the kind of moment that redefines a life, that marks a before and after in anyone's personal history. Tell me, do you believe certain people enter our lives to remind us of who we really are? When we separated, we remained in silence for a few minutes, processing the intensity of what had just happened. Words weren't necessary. Our eyes said everything. There was a new intimacy between us, a mutual understanding that something special had been born that afternoon. He caressed my face with a tenderness that made me realize that moment had been as significant for him as it had been for me. It was comforting to know I wasn't alone in that transformative experience, that he had also felt the magic of that unexpected encounter. Gradually, we returned to reality, but we both knew nothing would be the same after that day. The condominium document seemed insignificant compared to the magnitude of what we had discovered in each other. We talked briefly about the practical matters that had brought me there, but it was obvious that our attention was completely focused on what had just happened between us. Every exchanged look carried the memory of that intimate moment. Every spoken word had a subtext that only we two fully understood. When it came time to leave, we both reluctantly ended that encounter, There was a feeling that we were leaving something precious behind, something we might not be able to recover. He accompanied me to the door with a gentleness that revealed his education and respect, but also with a look that promised this wouldn't be our last intimate encounter. When we said goodbye, there was hesitation, a moment where we both wanted to prolong that farewell, transform it into a see you later loaded with expectations and unspoken promises. The path back to my apartment was a mixture of euphoria and reflection. I felt completely transformed, as if I had rediscovered a version of myself that had been hidden for years. Every step I took made me relive those intense moments in his office. Every memory sent waves of heat through my body. It was as if he had left an indelible mark on my soul, a physical and emotional memory that would remain with me forever. I realized I had spent so much time functioning on autopilot that I had forgotten what it was like to feel truly alive, truly connected with my deepest feminine essence. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying every detail of that extraordinary afternoon, every look, every word, every touch that had awakened dormant sensations. It was as if my entire body was in a state of alert, processing the intensity of that experience. I looked at myself in the mirror and saw a different woman, a woman who had rediscovered her ability to seduce and be seduced, to awaken passion and feel desire with intensity. It was both invigorating and disturbing because it meant I would have to reevaluate many things about my life and my choices. The days that followed were an emotional roller coaster. There were moments of euphoria when I remembered the intensity of that connection, and moments of questioning when I thought about the implications of that encounter. But one thing was certain: I had been touched by something extraordinary, something that would forever change my perception of love, desire, and possibilities. It was as if I had tasted a rare wine, and now all other flavors seemed bland in comparison. That afternoon had shown me that there were still wonderful surprises waiting for me in life, that it was never too late to rediscover passion. Have you ever had an experience that made you question everything you thought you knew about yourselves? I left that office completely transformed, carrying with me the certainty that some encounters are capable of redefining who we are. What happened that afternoon remains with me as a precious secret, a memory that warms my heart on the coldest days and reminds me that it's never too late to rediscover our capacity to feel. It was as if he had lit a flame within me that I thought was extinguished forever, a flame that now burned with renewed intensity, illuminating possibilities I didn't even know still existed. If this story touched you in some way, if you've experienced something similar or feel there's still much love to discover, leave your comments. Let's build together a community of women who believe life always reserves wonderful surprises for those who have the courage to open themselves to them. Remember, some seeds only flourish when they find the right soil to germinate, and perhaps it's time to prepare our hearts for new springs.